I wasn't looking for proof. That's the part that still keeps me up some nights. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't playing detective in my own marriage. I was just doing what I've always done. Handling the numbers. Lindsay hated dealing with finances. Not because she couldn't understand them. She's smart. But because she said they felt small, limiting. She liked talking about growth, potential, leverage. I liked balance sheets, predictability, stability. So when I logged into our shared account that Tuesday night to reconcile quarterly expenses, it felt routine, mechanical, safe, until I saw the charge. $3,850. Austin Executive Summit, VIP Private Guest Access. The amount didn't shock me. We've spent more on vacations, on furniture, on one of her brand elevation workshops. It was the description that made my mouse freeze. VIP, private, guest. I clicked the receipt attachment. There it was in clean digital print. Lindsay Blake, private guest. No company listed. No corporate reimbursement pending. No +1. No spouse. Just her name. The event wasn't public either. I looked it up immediately. Closed door. Invite only. Venture capital circles. Startup founders. Consultants who talk about scaling and exit strategies like their casual weekend plans. The kind of room where people go to trade futures. The date hit me next. 3 weeks ago. She told me she was in Houston for a marketing leadership workshop. She even complained about the hotel coffee and sent me a picture of a generic conference lanyard. Houston, not Austin. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for my brain to supply a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was bundled through a third-party vendor. Maybe it was a last-minute ticket transfer. Maybe she forgot to tell me. But something deeper than logic shifted. There are moments when a marriage doesn't crack loudly. No shattered glass. No dramatic reveal. Just a faint internal click, like a lock turning quietly from the inside. That receipt was mine. I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't call her out immediately. I didn't even feel rage. I felt displaced, like I had just discovered a room in our house I didn't know existed. That night after dinner, she was leaning against the kitchen island scrolling through her phone. One leg crossed over the other, wine glass resting near her elbow. She looked relaxed, almost glowing. I studied her face for signs of stress, guilt, anything, nothing, so I kept my voice neutral. "Hey," I said casually. "Random question." She hummed without looking up. "Did you go to something called the Austin Executive Summit?" Her thumb paused mid-scroll. Half a second. Most people wouldn't catch it. I did. She looked up slowly, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Why?" "I was reconciling expenses. Saw a charge for it. Didn't remember you mentioning Austin." The shift was instant. It wasn't shame. It wasn't nervousness. It was defense. "Oh my God, Aaron. Are you auditing me now?" The tone caught me off guard more than the content. "I'm not auditing you," I said carefully. "I just didn't know you were there." She let out a short, sharp laugh. "Wow, this is exhausting." "What is?" "This. The constant monitoring. The suspicion." I asked a question. "No, you didn't. You implied something." I blinked. "Implied what?" "That I owe you a travel itinerary every time I breathe." "That's not what I—" She cut me off by setting her wine glass down harder than necessary. "You seriously go line by line through expenses looking for something to question? Do you know how small that feels?" Small. The word landed heavier than it should have. "I handle our finances," I said slowly. "That's not new. And I handle growth." T back. "Also not new." The room felt tighter. "I'm not attacking you," I said. "I just didn't know you were in Austin." She leaned back against the counter, folding her arms. "It was networking. You wouldn't understand." The dismissal was subtle, polite even, but sharp. "Then help me understand." Her eyes hardened. "Not everything revolves around your comfort zone, Aaron. Some of us are trying to build something bigger." "Bigger than what?" I swallowed the question. "Why didn't you mention it?" She rolled her eyes like I'd just proven her point. Because every time money comes up, you tense up. You get cautious. You start calculating downside risk. K*LLS momentum. That's called responsibility. No, she snapped. It's called fear. The word echoed. Fear. I felt something in my chest cool. I've never stopped you from pursuing anything, I said quietly. She leaned forward now, intensity rising. Poverty breeds paranoia, Aaron. That's just reality. When people feel limited, they start imagining threats everywhere. Poverty. We weren't poor. We had a house in a good neighborhood. Retirement accounts. Savings. No debt outside the mortgage. But in her world, stability was another word for stagnation. Are you saying I'm paranoid because I asked about an expense? I asked. I'm saying your mindset is small. There it was again. Small. Living small. Thinking small. Acting small. It wasn't about the event anymore. It was about status. I studied her face. There was no remorse in it. Only irritation. Like I was inconveniencing her. I just didn't know, I repeated. And now you do, she said flatly, picking up her phone again. Conversation over. Just like that. She went back to scrolling, faint smile returning to her lips. The glow was back, but I wasn't in it. I stood there for a few seconds longer than necessary, watching her like she was someone I just met. Something wasn't adding up. Not the event. Not the reaction. The reaction was too aggressive for something innocent. That night, I lay awake replaying the last 6 months in reverse. The increased client dinners. The way she angled her phone away from me on the couch. The new wardrobe, sleeker, sharper, less comfortable, more strategic. The irritation anytime I brought up savings targets. The comparisons. God, the comparisons. Jason's already scaling into 7 figures. Melanie's husband just joined a venture board. Some men don't cap themselves. At the time, I thought it was motivation. Harmless ambition. Now it sounded like evaluation. Like she was benchmarking me against a different market. And I was underperforming. I didn't think she was cheating. Not yet. But for the first time in 10 years of marriage, I felt something unfamiliar sitting between us. Not distance. Assessment. And I realized something quietly terrifying as I stared at the ceiling in the dark. She wasn't defending our life anymore. She was outgrowing it. And I had no idea how long she'd been planning the upgrade. After that night, nothing exploded. There was no dramatic confrontation. No screaming match. No slammed doors. If anything, things became quieter. Too quiet. Lindsay didn't bring up Austin again. I didn't either. On the surface, we returned to routine morning coffee, separate commutes, the occasional dinner out. But once doubt enters your bloodstream, it doesn't leave politely. It circulates. I started noticing patterns I'd ignored before. Not because I wanted to catch her. Because my brain wouldn't stop connecting dots. Her phone was never far from her hand. That wasn't new. But now it was angled away from me more deliberately. If I entered the room mid-conversation, the screen dimmed. If I sat beside her on the couch, she shifted slightly, just enough to guard the display without making it obvious. One night, I walked into the kitchen unexpectedly. She was smiling at her screen, soft smile, not the public kind. When she saw me, her expression snapped neutral. "Who's that?" I asked casually. "Group chat," she said too quickly. "With work." She didn't elaborate. The work dinners increased. Not dramatically, just enough to normalize. Client retention meeting. Private investor cocktail hour. Brand strategy roundtable. All in Austin. Sometimes Dallas. Once San Francisco. The San Francisco trip was interesting. She told me it was confirmed last minute. 2 days. High-value networking. I offered to come. Make a weekend of it. Her response was immediate. "It's not that kind of trip, Aaron." "What kind is it?" "Focused." The word felt rehearsed. Focused. On what? I didn't ask. Instead, I replayed our previous months like security footage in my head. The emotional temperature shift. She'd become efficient with me. Polite. Functional. strategic. Affection wasn't gone, but it felt scheduled. Kisses before bed, light touches in public, performative normalcy. But int asterisk Macy, the spontaneous kind, fading. And when I tried to initiate deeper conversations about us, about where we were headed, she redirected them toward ambition. We're in a pivot phase. You have to think bigger. You can't be afraid to scale. Everything became language from another world. A world where marriage was a platform, not a partnership. The purchases started changing too. Designer heels that didn't match any events I knew about. A tailored blazer that cost more than my first car payment. A new watch. Subtle. Expensive. I asked once carefully. That's new. She glanced at her wrist. Investment in image. With whose money? Her eyes flashed. Are we seriously doing this again? I'm asking. It's called positioning, Aaron. You wouldn't question it if it paid off. Paid off. Like she was gambling. Or being funded. That thought sat heavier than I expected. Then there were the comparisons. They became sharper. You know what's interesting? The men at these events don't apologize for wanting more. I met someone who exited at 32. That's vision. You're talented, Aaron. You just don't leverage it. At first, I thought she was motivating me. Now it felt like she was testing alternatives. One evening, about 6 weeks after the Austin charge, I walked into our bedroom and saw her suitcase half-packed. Traveling? I asked. Just overnight. Investor dinner. Where? Here. Austin. You need a suitcase for one dinner? She paused. It might run late. Something about the phrasing made my stomach tighten. Might run late. Not will. Not planned. Might. Do you want me to pick you up? I offered. No, she said quickly. I'll Uber. She left around 6. At 9, I checked her location casually. We shared it for safety. At least we used to. It was off. I stared at my phone for a full minute. Maybe her battery died. Maybe she turned it off during dinner. Maybe. At 12:47 a.m. She came home. Not drunk. Not disheveled. Calm. Controlled. You're up? She asked. Couldn't sleep. She nodded. Set her bag down. Went straight to the bathroom. Shower. At 1 in the morning. I stood outside the bathroom door longer than I should have. Not listening. Just thinking. The next morning, I asked lightly, how was the dinner? Good. Productive. Who was there? A few consultants. Venture guys. Names? She looked at me over her coffee cup. Why does that matter? Just curious. She set the cup down slowly. You don't trust me. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I'm trying to understand what's happening in your world, I said. And I'm trying to build something you're not even interested in, she snapped. That's not true. Then stop interrogating me. There it was again. Blame shift. Every question became proof of my insecurity. Every concern became evidence of my limitation. By month 3, the emotional gap felt measurable. She'd stopped asking about my day. Stopped engaging in future planning. Kids? Let's revisit later. Home renovations? Let's not anchor ourselves. Anchor. Like our life was dead weight. Then one afternoon, while reviewing tax documents, I noticed something that made my chest go cold. A wire transfer. $12,000. From an external consulting account in her name. I didn't know she had one. The sender field listed a California LLC. I Googled it. Venture advisory firm. Based in Palo Alto. I didn't confront her immediately. I waited. That evening, I asked casually, you doing consulting on the side? She froze. Again that half second. It's exploratory, she said. For who? Why does that matter? Because it's $12,000. Her jaw tightened. You're unbelievable. I'm your husband. You're acting like an auditor. And you're acting like I don't exist. Silence filled the room. Then she said something I still hear clearly. You wouldn't understand the level I'm operating on now. Operating. Level. Now. Like I'd been demoted without notice. I didn't yell. Didn't accuse. didn't beg. I just watched her. And in that moment something crystallized. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional confusion. This was strategic. She wasn't drifting. She was transitioning. And I had the growing, sinking realization that I wasn't losing her to a mistake. I was being phased out. I didn't go looking for the final confirmation. By that point, I already knew. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way. Not with flashing red lights and undeniable **TS. I knew in the quiet way a person knows when they're no longer included in their own life. Still, there's a difference between suspicion and proof. Suspicion keeps you anxious. Proof changes you. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Lindsay had left her laptop open in the home office. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that she'd started using a separate email account months ago. Consulting Communications, she called it. I'd never asked for access. I didn't need to. But that day it was open. Not hidden. Not password locked. Just open on the screen. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, debating. This is the part people judge. The violation of privacy. But privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. And something in my gut told me I wasn't about to discover a misunderstanding. The inbox wasn't cluttered. It was curated, focused, and there it was near the top. From Daniel Mercer. Subject, timeline alignment. I clicked. The message was calm, professional, efficient. We should sync on the Q4 transition. If you're filing by September, that gives us a clean runway. I don't want loose ends. Filing. By September. My chest tightened. I scrolled. The thread went back months. Dinner reservations in Austin. Flights to San Francisco. Booked on the same days as her brand intensives. Conversations that were not romantic in tone. Worse, strategic. Once the divorce is formalized, we'll move forward publicly. You deserve someone who matches your velocity. I'm proud of how decisively you're handling this. Handling this, like our marriage was a project she was managing. Then I found the one that removed any remaining doubt. It wasn't long, just a few lines. I know it's hard pretending everything's normal with him, but we're almost there. After September, no more hiding. No more hiding. My hands didn't shake. I expected them to. Instead, I felt something colder than anger. Clarity. This wasn't an emotional affair that spiraled. It wasn't weakness. It was alignment. She'd been in a relationship with him for months. Not casually. Not impulsively. Deliberately. I checked the first email date. 5 months ago. 2 weeks before the Austin Summit charge. Before the late dinners increased. Before the new wardrobe. Before the "you're thinking small" speeches intensified. The summit hadn't been networking. It had been a transition meeting. I closed the laptop gently. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just finished. That night she came home glowing. There's no other word for it. Confident. Energized. Dinner was great, she said, slipping off her heels. You would have hated the conversation. Probably, I said evenly. She didn't notice anything different in me. That's the part that surprised me. 5 months of deception, and she still thought she was managing the narrative. We ate quietly. She talked about scaling strategies and acquisition models. I listened, not as her husband, as an observer. Daniel thinks, she started, then stopped. It was the first time she'd said his name out loud. She corrected smoothly. One of the consultants thinks Q4 is going to be volatile. Daniel, the California venture consultant. The one wiring her $12,000. The one planning our divorce timeline. Daniel Mercer? I asked casually. Her fork paused midair. What? The consultant. Daniel Mercer. A flicker of panic. So fast it almost didn't register. How do you know that name? I looked into the Palo Alto firm. Silence. Then she did something fascinating. She smiled. You've been researching me? There it was again. Redirection. Blame. You've been planning a divorce for 5 months, I said calmly. The smile disappeared. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Q4 transition. Filing by September. Clean runway. The blood drained from her expression. For a second, I thought she might actually admit it. Instead, she straightened her posture. You went through my emails. Yes. You violated my privacy. You've been coordinating your exit with another man. She inhaled sharply. This isn't what you think. I almost laughed. It's exactly what I think. The silence stretched long and thin. Then she said something that removed any lingering hope. I was going to tell you. Not denial. Not outrage. Just timing. When? I asked. When it made sense. Made sense. For who? For everyone. Everyone. As if I was a stakeholder in her rebrand. So this isn't recent, I said. She didn't answer. 5 months. I pressed. Her jaw tightened. It's not about the timeline. It is for me. She looked away. It evolved. No, I said quietly. It was constructed. That hit her. Her eyes sharpened. You don't understand the position I'm in. I understand perfectly. You've been comfortable, she snapped. Stagnant. I've been growing. With him. With opportunity. The word opportunity landed like a verdict. So that's what I am? I asked. A past version? She didn't say yes. She didn't have to. I studied her carefully. There were no tears. No desperation. No scrambling. She wasn't sorry. She was frustrated I'd discovered it before she finalized it. That was the moment it truly ended. Not the emails. Not the confirmation. The lack of remorse. You were going to file, I said. Yes. Finally. Honesty. And move to California. Yes. And this was planned before Austin. Silence. Then, yes. There it was. Clean. Direct. Undeniable. The affair wasn't physical impulse. It was a calculated exit strategy. I stood up from the table slowly. She watched me carefully now. You're not even angry? She asked. I considered that. I'm not surprised anymore. That unsettled her more than shouting would have. You're going to regret reacting like this, she said. I'm not reacting. What are you doing? I'm adjusting. She crossed her arms. So that's it? For me, yes. You're just giving up? I looked at her, really looked. I can't compete with an investment pitch. Something flickered in her eyes then. Not guilt, not love, assessment. And I realized something profound. She hadn't fallen out of love. She'd outleveraged it. And now that I'd seen the blueprint, I had no interest in arguing over the demolition schedule. She didn't leave immediately. That's something people don't talk about. When a marriage ends strategically, it doesn't collapse overnight. It transitions. Lindsay didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't accuse me of ruining her future. She reorganized. Within 48 hours of our confrontation, she'd already scheduled a consultation with an attorney. Not angrily. Not reactively. Prepared. I think we can keep this civil, she said one evening, standing in the doorway of our bedroom like she was presenting a proposal. No need to drag it out. Civil. Like we were dissolving a business partnership. You already planned the filing timeline, I said. Her jaw tightened. That was exploratory. 5 months of exploratory? She ignored the tone. It's better this way. For who? For both of us. I didn't argue. I'd realized something important. Once someone reframes your shared history as a stepping stone, there's no debate left to win. A week later, she sat across from me at the kitchen table with a printed draft of divorce terms. Organized. Highlighted. This isn't about betrayal, she said carefully. It's about alignment. Alignment. She kept using corporate language like it softened the blow. You and I want different things. No, I corrected. We value different things. She inhaled sharply. You're comfortable being comfortable. I'm not. And that justifies. This isn't about Daniel, she snapped. But it was. Just not emotionally. It was about trajectory. You think I'm holding you back, I said. She hesitated. That's not fair. It's accurate. Her eyes hardened. You don't take risks. I take calculated ones. Exactly, she said, like she'd won something. You live cautiously. That's fine. But it's not the life I want. There it was again. Not the life I want. Like our marriage was a starter apartment she'd outgrown. I built stability, I said quietly. You built limits. The word sat between us. Limits. You think I'm poor, I said finally. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. You called it poverty. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? She leaned back, frustration rising. I meant scarcity mindset. You operate from fear of loss. I operate from pursuit of gain. And that makes me less than? That makes you safe. Safe. The way she said it felt like an insult. In her world, safe meant stagnant. You're divorcing me because I'm not ambitious enough, I said. I'm divorcing you because I refuse to shrink. The conversation didn't escalate. It didn't need to. The message was clear. She reframed our entire marriage as a miscalculation. Later that week, she told her parents. The narrative shifted subtly. We've grown apart. Our visions no longer align. I need someone who pushes me. Pushes. I heard through mutual friends that she'd also described me as risk-averse and financially conservative to a fault. Translation. Small. The final conversation before she filed was the most honest she'd been. You're not a bad man, Aaron, she said calmly. You're just not built for the level I'm trying to reach. The level. I almost admired the clarity. And Daniel is? I asked. She didn't flinch. He understands velocity. Velocity. Speed. Momentum. I studied her face carefully. There was no shame. No hesitation. She genuinely believed this was an upgrade. You think this is upward? I said. It is. And I'm downward. You're comfortable. There it was again. Comfort as condemnation. She signed the papers 3 weeks later. The official reason listed in the filing? Irreconcilable differences. Unofficially, status misalignment. During mediation, she requested a clean split. No drama. No public scandal. I don't want this messy, she said. Of course she didn't. Messy implies guilt. And in her narrative, she wasn't betraying. She was ascending. The night she moved out, she stood in the foyer with 2 suitcases and a confidence that bordered on relief. I hope you understand someday, she said. Understand what? That this isn't about money. I looked at her steadily. It never is. It's about what money represents. She didn't respond, because she knew I was right. It wasn't the dollars. It was the validation, the proximity to power, the idea of being chosen by someone operating at a higher level. As she stepped outside, she paused briefly. I never meant to hurt you. I believed that, not because she cared deeply in that moment, but because to her I wasn't the injured party. I was collateral. After the door closed, the house felt larger. Not emptier, just quieter. And in that silence, I replayed her final justification. You live small. You think small. You operate from scarcity. You're safe. Divorcing me wasn't rebellion. It was repositioning. She didn't see herself as someone who cheated. She saw herself as someone who refused to settle. That's the dangerous part about ambition without loyalty. It rationalizes everything. For a few days, I wondered if she was right. If maybe I had been too cautious, too stable, too unwilling to chase something explosive. Then I checked our joint accounts one last time. She'd already transferred her share. Organized. Precise. No emotional residue. Just execution. That's when it truly sank in. She hadn't left because we were broken. She left because she believed she deserved better optics. And I wasn't the headline anymore. I didn't argue during the divorce. That surprised a lot of people. Her attorney expected resistance. Mine prepared for it. Friends told me to fight for what's mine. But I wasn't interested in fighting for a version of myself she had already discarded. There's something clarifying about being evaluated and found insufficient. It removes illusion. Once Lindsay left, I stayed in the house for exactly 32 days. Not because I was grieving, because I was assessing. Every room held evidence of a life built for stability. Structured, thoughtful, conservative growth. I had optimized for security. She optimized for acceleration. Neither approach is wrong. But one of them was invisible in a room full of louder personalities. I began reviewing everything, not emotionally but analytically. My career, my investments, my SK*LL set, my network, not to prove her wrong, to determine whether I had underestimated myself. The first decision I made was quiet. I resigned, not impulsively, not dramatically. I gave proper notice, closed projects responsibly, transitioned clients. My colleagues were confused. "You're stable here," one of them said. "Why leave?" "Stable." There it was again. I didn't explain. Instead, I moved. Not to California. Not to chase her orbit. I left Texas entirely. Small apartment. Different city. No shared acquaintances. No familiar restaurants. I didn't post about it. Didn't update social media. Didn't announce reinvention. I disappeared. The silence was intentional. People expect public breakdowns after betrayal. Or public glow-ups. Gym selfies. Motivational quotes. Leveling up posts. I did none of that. I rebuilt privately. First, I examined my so-called scarcity mindset. Was I cautious? Yes. Was I risk-averse? Not exactly. I was risk-calculating. There's a difference. So I shifted the variable. Instead of protecting income streams, I started reallocating capital into higher volatility sectors. Not recklessly, strategically. I'd spent years advising others on financial optimization. Now I applied that precision to myself. Angel investments, minority equity positions, 2 startup advisories. I leveraged quiet credibility instead of loud presence. Within 6 months, I wasn't just stable. I was diversified. But the transformation wasn't purely financial. It was structural. I stopped explaining myself, stopped defending my pace, stopped measuring value against spectacle. I woke up earlier, read more, cut distractions, built new networks intentionally, not flashy ones, effective ones. When people asked about my divorce, I kept it simple. She wanted something different. That was enough. I never mentioned Daniel, never framed myself as abandoned. Because here's the truth. I wasn't left. I was released from comparison. There's power in that. The anger faded faster than I expected. What replaced it wasn't revenge. It was detachment. I stopped checking her social media, stopped wondering how California was treating her, stopped picturing her adventure dinners. If she wanted velocity, she had it. Meanwhile, I built infrastructure. 2 years passed quietly. Income stabilized first, then accelerated. 1 advisory position converted into equity. 1 early-stage company I backed secured Series B funding. The numbers began compounding. I didn't celebrate publicly, didn't call mutual friends to update them. I stayed unreachable, not in bitterness, in focus. One night, almost 3 years after the divorce, I looked at my portfolio dashboard and realized something strange. My annual income had surpassed the combined projections Lindsay once admired. The irony didn't feel triumphant, felt distant, because by then, money wasn't the metric anymore. Peace was. The new city suited me, the anonymity, the absence of evaluation. No one there knew me as the safe husband. No one benchmarked my velocity. I wasn't competing. I was constructing. Some nights I thought about the language she used. Scarcity. Small. Comfortable. She was right about one thing. I had been comfortable. Comfortable believing stability equaled value. Now I understood something better. Value is internal. It doesn't beg for validation in crowded rooms. Compounds quietly. I didn't change into a louder man. I became a clearer one. No flashy car. No luxury penthouse. But strategic holdings. Liquid flexibility. Autonomy. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious. Not because I was afraid. Because I refused to build from deficit again. 3.5 years after she left, I received the first message. Unknown number. California area code. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another. I'd like to talk. I recognized the tone even without the name. Not urgent. Measured. Like she was reopening negotiations. I didn't feel anger. I felt distance. Because by then, I wasn't the man she had categorized. And she no longer had access to the one she left. That's the thing about silent reconstruction. No one sees it coming. Not even the person who once evaluated you. And by the time they do, you're already somewhere they can't measure. About a year after her first message, I heard the rest through mutual contacts. Daniel's firm had overextended. Aggressive plays, bad timing, investors pulling out. The clean runway she once talked about turned into layoffs and lawsuits. The Palo Alto condo was gone within months. What surprised me wasn't that ventures fail. It was how fast her world unraveled once the momentum stopped. The exclusive dinners disappeared. The invitations slowed. Velocity, it turns out, cuts both ways. Then she called. Not texted, called. I made a mistake, she said quietly. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just tired. I thought I was choosing growth. I didn't realize I was abandoning something real. I listened. Calm. Detached. She wasn't asking for money. She was asking for relevance again. For someone who had known her before the branding. But the irony was simple. She left because I was safe. Now safe was the only thing she wanted back. I didn't reject her with anger. I didn't lecture her about loyalty or say, I told you so. I just said, I hope you find what you're looking for. And I meant it. Because the truth is, I wasn't unreachable out of spite. I was unreachable because I had rebuilt without needing to be evaluated anymore. Divorcing me for being poor became her private torment. Not because I became wealthy, but because she realized I had never been poor. I was steady, grounded, building slowly. She mistook patience for limitation. By the time she saw the difference, I was no longer the man waiting to be chosen. Her decision was a gamble. Mine was construction. And construction, done quietly and consistently, doesn't collapse when applause disappears.